Marketing Live Show number 420. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us live. If you're watching us on our live TV station, Hospitality Marketing or Hospitality Channel TV, on Roku, Google, Amazon, Apple, Samsung, all of the channels. You can find us just pretty much anywhere, or on our iOS app for the Hospitality Channel. You can find it on Apple and or Google Play for Android. And of course, if you're watching our simulcast on a variety of Facebook pages, YouTube channels, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, which is just one. That's my profile page that we run the live show off of. And even on Twitch, if you're watching it on your game or your media console. So with all of that, let's jump into our topic this week is conditional formatting to create retargeting workflows. Sounds like a mouthful. And it kind of is. But going on the vein of getting some really good responses to content that we've done on the live show these past 3-4 episodes, where we're talking about more specifically about data and data reporting, aggregation of data, usage of data, translation of data into reporting, dashboarding. Keeping with that, because we're in the middle of budget season for hospitality. So data, of course, normally is a big issue to talk about anyway, but even more so with the fact that we're needing to utilize it now, next month, and finally, probably October when it comes to budget approval times, hopefully budget approval times. So for that reason, we're kind of focusing on it for the next, I have been for the past couple of weeks, few weeks, and for a couple more weeks and beyond, when we get into some calculators and how to generate numbers and use correlations and so forth and so on. And the podcast that follows this, the audio podcast, which we're on 39 platforms actually, so you can catch us anywhere, the Hospitality Marketing Podcast, even on Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, and Siri. Just ask them to play it, and it plays it. We made tools for all of them. We get into more of the tool functions of these things. So why the super sexy topic today of conditional formatting to create retargeting windows? Because it's an amalgamation of two shows that we've done that have gotten very strong responses. One was the custom audience discussion we had in show 417, which we did an article follow-up with. And on the podcast, on our radio station, we can talk about a radio station, Hospitality Radio. 37 platforms. 39 is the podcast. 37 platforms is our radio station. You can go see it at hospitalityradio.com or catch it on a whole ton of channels that distribute radio stations on the web. You'll see it also on iHeartRadio and Stitcher and a bunch of other places that run podcasts, but also on radio stations. So we're in both formattings now, which is a lot of fun. Lots of different podcasts, just not our own, but it's all about hospitality industry. So digressing back to our content. Conditional formatting, combination of two conversations. Show 417 in relationship to custom audience, aka segmentation, and the usage of GA4 and being able to render those kind of data points. And the other aspect, which is the creation of workflows and funnels that refer to optimization of targeting and using the data in a relevant way for strategy. So conditional formatting is the component that's talking about creating the segmentations that you want to focus on that is used in your workflows that are related to retargeting. Hence the very convoluted title, Conditional Formatting to Create Retargeting Windows. So what do we mean by all of this? Let's define first the segmentation of audiences. We talked about in show 417 the two sides of audience generation. The historical, which was the persona-driven, the identification of who we're looking to target, the demographics, the persona, the behavioral, the customer profile, creating avatars and personas that are, these incomes, these family groupings, these geographic references, these income levels, these interest categories. Those are all definable targeting aspects. And that's been traditionally used in most of our marketing platforms, well, be it the paid platforms of Google and Bing and so forth, and also the paid social platforms of Facebook, X. Never get used to that. Not that I'm a big proponent of even advertising on everything, but just the channels that you use. Pinterest is another good one. And so you have this ability to isolate out the categorizations of people that you want to put your content in front of. And so because of that, you can create a targeted predestination to your messaging. What content ads you're creating will go to those people that you've designated. On the other side of the segmentation creation, custom audiences, is the creation of an audience based on actions. In other words, and this is easy to context. Someone that went to your website, went to your booking engine, but didn't book for the past 30 days. You can create an audience segmentation of those people. Now, you may think, well, that's we don't know who they are. We just know their actions, and they can be identified by their actions. We know that these people did that or didn't do that, considering the conditions that we're trying to parameter. But we can create an audience of people that engaged with our website via our ads or our website, that went to our booking engine, but did not actually convert. We can now make GA4 track those. Now, UA couldn't have done that before, but you had different conditions to identify. You had other things you had to set up here with everything being tracked in GA4. You have the ability to just go and designate, and then from that moment forward, begin to create the segmentation of the audiences. So we identify people that went to our website, went to our booking engine, didn't book past 30 days. Which, from a reason to be interested, is, well, obviously they've done all the things we've asked. They've engaged the way that we wanted to ask. They went to our website like we asked, and actually went to our booking like we asked, but they didn't convert. So we know that we brought the horse to the water. We just haven't made them drink yet, or they haven't drank yet. So we need to look at ways to give them the information that is going to be most helpful to them, where they may not have found it before, or maybe it was not the right timing. They just want to go back and relook at all their choices, whatever. What we don't know about them is, we can identify them as a segmentation to re-identify ourselves in front of them. So you have these two sides. I want to talk to these people, which is the personas and the customer profiles. And I want to talk to these people, the ones that by definition did or didn't do what I asked within the context of their engagement with us. Obviously, putting those two together means that we even have a sharper point to the pencil. But let's just keep those as two sources of categories for it. That's our conditional audiences. These people that we want to talk to, these people we want to talk to because they didn't do something, or they're in classification of having followed a procedure that we want to create an audience from. Now, other side of our conversation of our topic, conditional formatting to create retargeting workflows. Obviously, both of these sets of people are of interest to us because both of them are much higher in the opportunity of converting them to purchasing at our hotel based on who they are or what they haven't done yet. Much more so than anybody else that we don't know anything about as to whether they would or wouldn't. Advertising and ads and showing up that is in Sydney, Australia, about a next week offer is unlikely to happen unless they're already in the path of being here, and this is just an option of opportunity for them, which means we could have probably targeted them with things like knowing that they're going to travel. So we want to create the ability to get back in front of these people, or to engage them in ways that we can offer them other value propositions or incentives and or persistency of front of mind, that they end up making their conversion choice with us. That is the workflow equation of this. Now, on our podcast, we've talked about tools that use this, that define this. There's Funnelytics and bunches of other ones that we've gone through and reviewed. And we can also use this process as a creation of a workflow to determine yieldability. And that is a platform that we talked about and have used for years called Geru, Geru, which allows you to actually formulate based on audience size and value of conversion of those audiences from what channels. You make this little workflow that actually shows how you convert people along the way, and the people that you don't convert, how do you re-engage with them? And then that portion of conversion, eventually you have the zombies that don't do anything that you do with them, but they're still there. And the people that actually convert, and you can actually mathematically calculate what the revenue potential of an entire marketing program is based on your conversion relationship ratios of the audiences that you're targeting versus the conversion that they're going to represent versus the money that they would spend because of what you're offering. And you can actually determine whether a marketing plan is viable in format to attempting to do without having to spend the money to learn to do that same process. So I highly recommend you listen to our podcast on our radio station or on our podcast channels that go back in tools. Look for Geru. It's searchable. You can go on hospitalitychannel.tv, search for tools, Geru. It'll pull up the shows that we've talked about Geru on, and you can play them back to understand modalities and methodologies. And of course, links, of course, in the show notes of those to go and see the actual platforms themselves. That being said, so you create this workflow in the sense of, this is what I want to engage with these audiences I've created. I want to re-engage in the same modality with these people, whether it's a Google ad, and so Google retargeting ad, display ad, possibly YouTube engagement, different media, okay, visualization or not, incentive offers. If they were engaged through CRM, whether or not there's a resend of the email, anybody doing emails, CRM engagement already should know that you have a first generation, second generation, third generation dialogue with emails based on what their engagement was with your first email. Did they open or not open it? If they opened it, what did they click on? Based on what they clicked on, that gets recategorized, puts them in a recategorization of a new audience that was interested in, say that they clicked on military offers. We know that now that any military offers, we want to direct maybe towards them, especially in a retargeting circumstance that we're talking about right now. So that's just CRM. Well, we're applying it to our marketing strategy. And that is, we engaged them at certain channels. They did or did not, like in the instances of our custom audience, they went through our website, went to our booking engine, didn't book. So let's see if we can re-engage them. We know that they're at the point of interest, of decision. And depending upon what they looked at when they went to our booking engine, which we can define what dates they were looking for, and we'll get into some granularity in a little bit, we can go over and then offer them something or change context that might be more relatable to them to want to book with us. Now, there's really great efforts that are out there right now being used. One's from Flip2, their discovery program, in which they offer the ability to engage with, are you looking to book with us now, next week, 2 weeks, next month, this quarter, next quarter, whatever. And then also they offer, when you select your times, your dates, it'll show you all the things that are going on in the destination. And you can actually click and choose what you're interested in. And so all of that data is accumulable too, to target with. Just letting you know, there's some really cool stuff out there. So regardless of that, on a workflow, say we engaged with Google Ads, they went to our website, they went to our booking engine, didn't convert. We now have two things to consider about our retargeting in our workflow. What did they engage us about? Okay, was it a specific offer, or was it just general interest to general booking? What dates did they look to be interested in, and how soon those dates are? That's the first relevant marker. How soon of those dates were they looking at us for? Was it next week, 2 weeks, next month, 3 months, 6 months, next year? Because that determines two things. What would be the next best engagement, re-engagement with them from a perspective of creating this workflow chart, conditional blocks that go little lines, the little lines. By the way, we have visual examples of this when we have the show notes, so you can go back and see what we're talking about. Also, based on what we want to re-engage them with, what channel, this channel or alternate channels, what do we know about them to be able to engage with other channels? Have we solicited them to give us an email or not? That kind of stuff. We then determine the frequency in which we're going to engage with them. Why is this relevant? Well, if they were looking at dates that were within the next 30 days, then our window of opportunity to get in front of them is shorter, which means we should increase our relevancy by our frequency of getting in front of them. Now, this is done incredibly poorly by most agencies that saturate retargeting based on browbeating technology. Oh, you touched our website. We are going to annoy the bejeebers out of you by persistently retargeting and showing up in everything that you do, whether it be a social media platform, any website you go to that have ad space available. We are just going to obnoxiously be in front of you as often as we can, which usually creates what I call the piss me off effect. I was thinking about you, but you've pissed me off that I will never do business with you because you are too annoyingly frequent with how you're trying to be in front of me. You're invasive. I just happened to land on your website, maybe by mistake, and now I have to deal with your persistent ads everywhere. So frequency is important. Engagement with the user is important. That short window means we need to increase our frequency because we have a shorter window to constantly be front of mind for them, but not to the point of annoyance. So there is a duration of frequency that must be maintained that says, you know what, after these many attempts over this period of time, without engagement and without the variations of alternative engagement that we have tried, they're zombies. Whatever reason they went to our booking engine in the past 30 days or whatever criteria we created in the custom audience segmentation, they are not interested in what we have to offer. They've either made another choice or what they found about us is not resonating for them. It opens up another window of creating some sort of inquiry to ask them, what didn't you find? But that's another discussion for another show. So stop. At that point, anything past that frequency and and duration and so forth is just in the piss me off world. That's the world that people get into with you're really now just annoying me. If I wanted to buy from you, I would have bought from you, but I haven't. And since I haven't, I don't want to. And now I'm actually certain I won't because of how you're multiplying your engagements with me. So those are important aspects of this. The other is the progression of conversation that you have. Now we had this in a much more detailed conversation in, I think, show 418. I'm looking at the notes for 418. Yes, how to deconstruct and reassemble a failing marketing plan. We discussed the layers of engagement. A lot of times, and we're going to get more conversation with this in just a couple of minutes, the same message is just repeated in retargeting. It's like, oh, maybe you didn't see me the first time I said this, so let me say it another dozen times. That doesn't work. There's a progression of engagement that happens. First engagement, great. Depending upon if they did engage with you and the audiences you create from that engagement trigger, okay, determine what you offer next. If they didn't engage with you, then I would say channel shift. They didn't resonate on the channel that they found you on, so see if there's another way on another channel. So AKA, if they saw your Google ads, went to your website, didn't act on it, created a custom audience from people that went from Facebook to your website but didn't even go to the booking engine, then create that audience and use that as a targeting for Facebook. Maybe there's a different way to say that in Facebook, a little bit more content, long tail content to that, maybe some event driven stuff, depending on the dates thing that we just talked about. Those are ways of doing that. If they went from Facebook to your website and went to your booking engine, maybe that's a different message compared to those that didn't go to your booking engine, because obviously they have a more advanced interest in with you. Okay. And because of that, you can be more direct about specific things that might be of value to them, maybe value incentives, triggers to go over and allow them to convert or create the conversion value for them. Kind of what old pop-ups used to do, kind of stuff. Don't use pop-ups, just saying that's what old pop-ups used to try to do. So that ability to create dimensional communication, first generation, second generation, third generation, is a process of a workflow. You should already do that in your email CRM campaigns, where here's my initial contact with you, what engaged, what didn't engage. If you did engage, what did you engage with? Segment that audience. It's the same, it's just parsing out the same audience you started with as to fractioning is what they engaged with. And then if they didn't convert, create that as a custom audience of people to retarget with a next generation message, not the same message, the next generation message that allows them to maybe see the offers that you're making or the interest or your property's value proposition in a different light. It's a chance to continue the story, so to speak, rather than hammer them with the same offer, which is a detriment that a lot of vendors do. They're lazy about ad generation and creative content because it's the most expensive thing for agencies to do. Speaking of agencies to this end, and let's go through a little bit of the things with agencies. As I mentioned, creative is one of the most expensive components of it, because it requires actual creative talent. And although AI can augment and speed up processes and so forth, the real reality of creating good communicative content for marketing still needs a human intervention. The ability to translate, no matter how accurate your prompt is in creating the content, the nuances that humanize it to the voice and context that a human who had been doing it or human that is doing it can make into the content generation itself, and images as well. One of the dangers of these automation processes is sometimes images may get created to be helpful when in fact they're irrelevant. I speak to about Google PMax. We're seeing it a lot out there. A lot of agencies are using it whether they tell their client or not. Most of them don't, and unfortunately, regrettably, get discovered that they have been, or they're very proud of using PMax, and the client doesn't really know that that means they're just paying the agency to babysit something they could do themselves. Because PMax, for anybody that has used it, is Google's automation marketing program. It basically says, tell us what you want us to do. Do you want ROI? Do you want audience building? Do you want lead generation? And we will, and give us some basic, simple information, 3 or 4 lines here, 3 line here, maybe a logo, not even a logo, because they'll rip it off your website anyway. And it'll go out and create Google ad campaigns, display campaigns, video campaigns, audio campaigns, OTT campaigns. It'll go and do all these miraculous things. But if you look at what's produced, it's generic cotton candy stuff. And as we pointed on the news coverage a couple weeks ago for 418 show, Google's is getting caught breaking their own rules. That their bots are actually breaking their own spam rules by how they're doing their marketing. Yes, Google can do better for its own platform because it's its own platform. However, the whole idea of automation reduces the burden of asking the client for collateral and the inherent problems with that because clients don't have collateral always uh, developed in a way that can be easily used for 15-second snippets, 30-second snippets. They have a lot of glamour images for their website, especially if it's similar to how brands operate their websites, which are empty porte-cochees and front desks and generic stuff that has no warmth or depth or characters. And however usable in some circumstances, especially when saying here's our king suite room and it shows you a picture of the king suite room, there's no social media engagement. There's not a person or an actor or actress in it. There's no humanization to the images. And so if Google doesn't have the images it needs to create the ads that you've asked it to create, it'll go gen images or unfortunately sometimes take images that may not be yours in the sense that, gee, that sure looks like my competitor across the street because it identified my geography, it identified my hotel, but then it only took images that it found from the area and it took my competitor's image. Have seen that happen. So PMax, it's a lazy man's marketing. If you are at a level where you can't bring on a third party, and if you don't have the internal bandwidth and capabilities to do your own marketing, PMax is a viable option. It's better to do it than to not do it at all. That is the only measure I give value of PMax. Will PMax improve? Yes. Will PMax become more dominant? Most likely. But for right now, PMax is the default if there's no other options that you can do. And even then, I'd say with a grain of salt, have somebody babysit and sit on it so that everything looks the way it's supposed to so you don't get into trouble with what it sends and shares. That being said, other agency woes, other than content development, which is very expensive, is ad variation creation. Again, it's a time-consuming process to say we want to target these things, but because the ambiguity of not knowing which combination is going to produce the most, they reduplicate the same ads regardless of the segmentation that they might attempt. That's if they attempt segmentation. A lot of times they simply get the channel up and they have 4 or 5 ads to show, look at, we have 4 or 5 different ads running. Granted, maybe only one's really going to persistently run, the other 4 turn into garbage, but you don't get that follow-up story. You don't get that conclusion to how the 5 different ads perform. You only get the overall success ratio of, look, we have ads running and this says that we generated this much revenue. If they actually set the tracking up, that it would tell you the revenue rather than implied it, like saying, well, if 1,000 people came to your website and you had a 3% click-through, then 30 people went over and booked. And if your ADR was this and your length of stay was this and your occupancy was this, and this is the amount of money that each transaction created, so we generated this much money. Those are implied metrics. Terrible things to have. Sometimes that's all you can have, especially if you're doing marketing for branded hotels where you don't get to track through the booking engine on the things that you're doing. But if it's the only metrics you're getting, and then there's always what are we using as the conversion metrics? Are those legit? Is that traffic conversion at that number? Is that ADR at that number? Is the length of stay at that number? It always should be verified and re-verified. If you leave it to be at the vendor's level, they will tell you the moon and the stars were brought to you and the sun rises because of them. I've seen that all the time too. So the other aspects of not having a lot of creative, because it's expensive for an agency to produce, not having a diversification of ad types, not just ad variations. Do they do click-to-calls? Do they do video ads? Do they do audio ads? Do they do the retargeting ads? Do they do display ads? That's just Google platform. You can duplicate that conversation with Bing as well. But are they diversifying what they're doing? Usually no, and they'll go to PMax, but then show you how they created all these variations when in fact all they did was tell PMax to go fetch. So be careful of that. Look for verification and validation persistently through that process. Another thing I would say is also look at verification of conversion metrics as to how it's being presented to you. Understand how that process works so you can ask specifically about them breaking down how they measure their success to your satisfaction. And if an account manager that you've been deferred to because the A team that pitched you ain't the people that are working on it, then hold their feet to the fire that they get you a clean answer, not the I don't know, I'll get back with you, and then hope that you don't ask them again because they didn't get back with you. I see that all the time too. Don't let that happen. Be persistent and go back to whoever sold you whatever they sold you and hold them accountable. Like, hey, dude, you said this was a part of what you did. That's one of the reasons why we gave you the contract. I'm not getting these answers. Give me these answers, or we will reevaluate what our contract renewal will be potentially, or breaking of it. Seen that happen too. The other aspect of content, ad variations, is also siloing. We've gone way ahead finally from having to discuss how revenue management operates over here and marketing operates over here in your operation. However, we have another hurdle to cross, and that is the collaboration of the types of advertising you're doing collectively. Paid social versus paid ads versus organic social versus website content and SEO engagement values. Often the agencies that are working with you, and it sounds like I'm bashing agencies, there's great agencies out there, okay? But I've unfortunately come across a lot of challenging ones with clients that ask me to literally be the unbiased perspective of, are we getting our money's worth? Are we getting what we need? Are we getting the reports correctly? Can you do an audit to tell us if what they're telling us is true? Bread and butter for me every day. So the idea that you use the symbiotic relationships of all the different channels you're doing for marketing to be collaborative, which brings us back to our discussion of the topic, which is the retargeting workflows. Workflows are about the channel usages. If I'm pushing somebody, as I was talking about earlier, through Google, and their first engagement brought us to a point that they fell into a custom audience, or segmentation now, as they call them, of people that went to my website, went to my booking engine, and booked in the past 30 days, then that means what I did got them that far, but it didn't convert them. So that was my first generation engagement, making sure that I don't say the same thing a second time the same way. I can try the same channel, maybe given the circumstances of the fact that they went that far, which is usually how I look at it. And depending upon what dates they were looking at as to how far out they were looking, like if it's next day or 2 days, I don't think I have an opportunity to change their mind. They probably were looking at a variety, made a choice and pulled it, but I'll try anyway. But if I have a week or two to look at it, being able to get in front of them again, I might most probably use the same channel. Whoa, hand gestures. Might probably use the same channel again, gestures included, to try again. Not the same message, but the same channel. If I have a longer stream and they looked and maybe didn't go to my booking engine, and or even if they did, but I have a 60-day plus window, or 30-day plus window, excuse me, then I might try to shift the conversation by creating the audience that they fell into over to another channel. I don't see a lot of agencies doing that. I see them banging a retargeting on the same channel that it was created on. So I see agencies that create audiences or segmentations in a general way, just if they landed to the website, because they're looking for large numbers. They're looking for big numbers to put in front of you, the client, that says, look at this. These are all this big number here of people that came to your site. And these are all the people that we try to retarget from all those people that went to your website. They try to make impressive numbers. I'm more worried about the value of the KPI, which is what I want to know. What did it produce? What am I bringing to the bank? Okay, that's my KPI. Okay, at the end of the day, what's my top line revenue contribution of that channel? And that can come in many formats. Like, for instance, if we went into meta search, the displacement from OTAs is not just the fact that we generated a new meta search and the dollars are there, but also the commission savings from OTAs, not having to give them the money, and a very hard to but very valuable calculation is the lifetime value engagement of now having directly engaged with them, getting their information in correlation to their conversion with us, allows us to continue to engage with them after their stay with us, which is a measurable, calculable value that goes far beyond the displacement of channel from OTA, far beyond the actual dollar revenues of their single first purchase. Another story, another time. Actually, we've had that conversation before, but we'll have it again in the near future when it comes to budgeting for meta search to come. Anywho's, going back to the crossover between the channels, agencies tend to be very much about big numbers. We engaged them here, we redefined them, and just got in front of them until they told us to mess off because we pissed them off, because we just flooded them with every retargeting and digital display and anything else we could do. Congratulations, you've now made enemies. Very few of them that I have seen have a structured workflow for retargeting that says, given these conditions, we'll stay and attempt another time with the same channel. Given the results of that, the people that didn't get shifted to this channel, re-engaged with this content, next generation. Okay. And from those that didn't engage, we'll try either, again, based on windows of opportunity, the same channel. If not, we'll shift them to one third and final channel. If that doesn't work, they go to the zombie list. They're good for identifying interest. Maybe the timing was off. Maybe the offer was off. Maybe the occupancy wasn't available. There's lots of factors we can't pre-identify without them telling us. So we don't lose what they are. I call them zombies. We don't lose them as an audience. We just identify them as a non-engaged audience that brought themselves to this audience classification. Okay. So that in future tense, like same time next year, hey, the zombie audience from last August of last year. Let's see if it was a timing issue. Let's try to re-engage with them again. Get us in front of them again. Remember, retargeting isn't just about their final conversion and leave it at that and go off to the next program. There's a lifetime engagement with all of this. What happens or doesn't happen now can happen and rehappen again or not happen in the future. Usually year over year, or business cycles, or interest demand. Like if a I'm trying to think of a music concert, Taylor Swift concert comes in, and you had all this demand, and these people were segmented as an audience that you wanted to target. And if Taylor Swift was going to come back again at another time, you can pretty much assume the same people that engaged with you for the first Taylor Swift concert are probably going to be people that you could retarget again. Hey, get in early, get in fast, get the rooms before they get sold out. Probably do the same type of targeting. That goes strongly for event-driven stuff. That's the parts that really work strong, is when they're for specific interests. Then that retargeting and keeping that audience is of high value. So no audience is totally dead. No audience is, there's a caveat to that, but there are audiences you just need to let go. In spite of multiple channels, multiple reattempts, multiple recycled attempts, for whatever reason, even if there may no longer be in existence, that email or that engagement or that relationship or whatever circumstances in life happen, it's not necessary to always use anybody you've ever engaged with. You do have to let audiences go, but you really have to make sure that lemon is squeezed dry, that you have tried variations, you've tried multi-channel, you've tried multiple messages, you've tried recurring interests, you've tried recurring cycles of time, and nothing has gone them past where they first engaged with you. Let it go. And use it as a reference point for math, actually, as to your loss variations for your audience creation. Out of these audience, because when I was talking about that Guru workflow where it says, which channels and total traffic and who engaged and who didn't traffic and what goes on, the number of these people that truly ultimately don't engage, they're totally zombied out, gives you that ratio relationship with these audiences is to keep a higher accuracy in your formula to determine what the yieldability of that audience is. It's so easy to go and say, well, based on Facebook, with these targeting things that we've put in there, we should be reaching 250,000 people. Okay, well, if we get 1% conversion, oh my gosh, 2,500 people are buying our product. And what's our ADR and length of stay? Boom! Doesn't work that way. You're arbitrarily making up a number. Click-through doesn't make conversion. Click-through is simply that, click-through. Your conversion is based on tracking that campaign correctly to know what actually converted from those people that did click. That's the number that you get to assign on the strategy of your audiences. Well, a lot of that audience that you're creating from the custom segmentations we're talking about goes to how much of your audience never truly produced, regardless of your efforts to re-engage them or to engage them through a workflow. So for that reason, that number becomes relevant. When you put it in, you have actual data to back up that we are likely not going to get 15% of the click-through people to buy anything. Now, where in the funnel that might happen, that be at the very end of it, it might be at the very beginning. It depends on how you want to calculate your math. But if you go over and say, this is our audience that we're attacking with a Facebook ad, this is what we're going to do with them when they shift to Google, if this is where we think they're going to be shifted to Google with the criteria we've created. And this is what we do with the people that don't engage with us then, and we're going to shift them over to Facebook. Again, last chance. Or if we did have them engage with an email, maybe a CRM engagement, or maybe we go over to another social platform, or Bing, or YouTube, okay? still Google, but different channel. And if after all of this, we put them into a category that they've become defined in, and we reconstitute that category again, future tense, and still nothing, that crucible of number is what we ratio into our drop-off rates to know that we, regardless of the audience we think we have at this level, will still have a drop-off rate. That's a very valuable number. Numbers that are very valuable in workflow calculations is drop-off rates. And if you don't believe me, start creating your own work funnel and come up with a solid way of justifying what you think is the conversion of the audience you've driven to that point. If I advertise to 250,000 people this Facebook ad, according to what Facebook says the audience should be of size, based on all the filters I've created, the number of people you think that are actually going to engage with your ad is a dartboard throw unless you have historical data to refer to give some parameter that says, well, it's been as high as this and as low as this. So let's benchmark a median or average weight mean it. There's lots of different math ways to do it to get better accuracy, because what you really want to have is a confidence factor that if you create this workflow and you calculate the conversion values in your workflow and the ultimate successes of your efforts of targeting, retargeting through the workflow, you can come up with a realistic number that should be within single digit percentages what you actually are able to generate from this. From the whole campaign, which channels, multi-channels, usage of channels, and everything else, and what ads you're putting in, the diversity of the ads, the conversion value of the ads, the channel shifting, the CRM, get all of those things in that workflow for retargeting. You should be able to have a number at the end. That's where that Guru platform is really helpful. That will tell you, based on everything you've done, this is probably the revenue you want to generate. And you can use that on all the channels you do the engagement process and the workflow for. You do have other numbers, which is how much does it cost per click, cost per thousand, whatever the modality of cost is for those channel usages. You can determine how much you need to spend to generate this revenue down over here. That's very powerful. Owners love, and C-level people love, the fact that you're walking in with these numbers before you spent $1 of their money. Because this means you have a good grip on what your target is and the modality to get there, rather than hey, let's try it. Let's launch it, see what happens. If it doesn't work, we'll immediately change it. Yes, there are times you need to do that. We've done that ourselves. You need to approach it with, we have a spectrum of, you always have to try something new. 15%, 20% of your total ad campaign should always be on what you don't normally do. You should always try, because as we've always said with any advertisement campaigns, if you only advertise to what you think you know, you're only self-creating the wheel that reaffirms that you're doing it right. You may be getting a cup of water right next to a raging torrent of river that you didn't really know was there. So you always have to try a percentage of your efforts to something you don't normally do. So thinking about our process of conditional formatting to create retargeting windows. We talked about the one side, which was the perspective of the content that you're creating, excuse me, not just content, but the audience segmentation that you're creating, its definition of usages in a workflow that allows you to translate those potential targets, whether it be from inception of who you want to target to inception of what they are doing, and you want to target them because of that, okay? And you put those together to create your way of formatting your workflows for retargeting on all the channels that you should use and the dimensions of content that you create for them. So with that in mind, I think we have hit the topic hard. I think that we were very precise to it. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Like I said, on our TV stations, on our, if you want to watch all of our reruns all the time, like I Love Lucy, you can go to hospitalitychannel.tv. That's where all of our live shows run in I Love Lucy pre-programmed reruns, along with all of our podcasts. That's a kind of a catch-all for all of our shows. If you want to watch this on TV, as always, on the free side, there is the Hospitality Channel that can be found on your Roku or Samsung TVs, your Amazon Fire Stick, Amazon Prime, Google TV, Apple TV, any smart TV. You can just look for the Hospitality Channel, and the live show will always be on Friday mornings. We do recast this show 11:30 a.m. Wednesdays, Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends, and 11:30 a.m. London, UK time for our EU and Mideast friends. So I have a little bit more favoritistic time frame. Although, thank you all for and joining us from places that have incredible time zone variations, but still you find the time to watch us live. And thank you so much. And of course, the people I'm waving a hand to are the people that follow us on Facebook pages all throughout the world, as well as YouTube channels all throughout the world, X live broadcast, Twitch broadcast, and LinkedIn, which is on my profile on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or feedback or want to talk with me or have topics or want to join the show, you certainly can at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer each and every email along with the same email for our podcast, which we will do just after this show, an audio version of our podcast, which is not the same as our live show. We recap a little bit of the points we make in our live show, but we really talk about tools and techniques to use those tools related to a symbiotic conversation of what we're here on workflow. So we'll talk a little bit about funnelytics again, other funnel-based tools, Guru again, to get very familiar with it, because as I said, we're in budget season. And these are very useful tools to model out your marketing plan, which, not to go back to the topic after I say we're done with the topic, but I am, is when you're pointing out a budget that you need to spend, and they try to poke at, well, do you really need that? Wonderful, instead of this dollars, we give you this the dollars. Then don't expect these revenues. And if they say, well, that's pretty concrete. No, here's the math. The number I gave you is because that's what you asked me to generate. Remember how the whole budget process starts? It says, here's our top line revenue goal. Now tell me how we're going to make it. Sales goes off and do their thing. Revenue management figures out their thing, occupancies and rates and so forth. Marketing does their thing, hopefully collaboratively between all of them. And the calculation of conversions and volume of traffic and so forth, if you show them a workflow that says, this is what we would be doing, this is what we expected for the efforts that we're doing, this is how we're reclaiming the people that don't engage with us, and what value they present as we try to re-engage with them. So ultimately, we, based on the cost and the history of costs that we know and the audiences that we can target, this is the revenue that we believe we would gain from these kinds of expenses to do so. It's really hard for ownership and C-level to say, yeah, but you're not going to have that much money. Then don't expect the revenue goal you gave me. Sure, lightning can hit somewhere. We could have an amazing fact that a Taylor Swift concert shows into our backyard and we didn't plan for it, and we get sold out for 4 days we didn't plan. Great. Reality is, if you want this revenue that you gave me, this is my calculation based on hard data of what it's going to take to get there. That's my budget. It makes for a very compelling case. So it's well worth all the efforts that I'm talking about. So with that, I will finally close our content for today. Again, our topic today was conditional formatting to create retargeting workflows. It kind of flows a little easier off the tongue now that we've talked it from front to back as to what that actually means. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time, and I truly look forward to talking to you all next week.